Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion on how books differ between the US and the UK. This was prompted by my friend Joanna reading Beach Read and then asking me how my edition ended because she was listening to the audiobook whilst reading the Kindle and finding out that the ending was different. So then it just got me to thinking about how books differ and how the publishing industry and why books would differ, why they would produce and print a different book for the UK and the US market. I'd say there are different levels of this, having Beach Read right at the far end, but looking at it just from the beginning, that the most obvious of differences between the UK and the US is the cover. That you get some books which have identical covers. The covers do not change, they've just kept the same designer and the same cover art on both editions. However, you get some editions, some books that have different covers. Fair enough. Different teams, different designers, different covers. And I've heard that this is done because as a whole they are marketing it for different audiences, and the UK audience likes, I think, a more, artistic cover. There are distinct differences and there's generally more of a theme, I'd say, with the UK ones and the US ones. You can definitely tell, not definitely, but I think if you put the UK and US ones all in a place and you didn't know which one was which, you could probably pick out the vast majority which ones are the UK and which ones are the US. There's definitely different styles and you can see the different styles that they're going for. And as well as the cover art, you get different, the publishing of the actual book is different, that the actual editions they're printed differently, that you have a UK book which, well, this one's actually quite floppy for a UK book, but they can have much tighter bindings, whereas the US ones, at least in paperbacks, they're much more floppy and much easier to just open up, and the heights as well are different. So those are the aesthetic differences that you get between the UK and the US, and fair enough. There's nothing, the aesthetics of a book do not impact your reading experience. You are still consuming the same words. But then there's a step further, and there are changes that are made to the actual text. And this is where I'm like, well, what is the original text and what was originally written? And why would you change it? So this could be just the naming of the book. So, for example, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Northern Lights, changed to the Golden Compass, People We Meet on Vacation, You and Me on Vacation. Those are just a few that I have thought of that have different names depending on the market they're sold at. And I don't know why, some of them do have these different names. Harry Potter, I think it was the decision that philosopher was too complex of a word. I don't know why Northern Lights is too complex and I had to go Golden Compass. I don't know. But as a whole, the naming of a book doesn't affect the actual text again. It's just the name on the front cover. It is a little bit bizarre, but it doesn't affect the reading experience again because it is just the name. It does probably cause confusion, especially if you weren't aware that there are different names between the US and the UK and you accidentally bought the same book twice. I think that could be very easily done because you aren't aware that it's actually the same book, just with this different name. There then is stylistic changes in the writing or adjustments to suit a different market, with words such as changing of valor with a U to valor without the U for the US market. At least that's how I've seen it on the cover, and I would assume if they've changed it on the cover, they've changed it in the text as well. But those sorts of stylistic changes where you remove the U from colour and valor, you spell analyse with a Z instead of an S, and I'd say that those won't affect anything because it's literally just changing a couple of letters. You're removing U's and adding Z's and those sorts of things where words are spelt differently. You're just changing the spelling. But then how far do you go with that? Do you just change the spelling, whereas words with analyse? Or do you go as far as changing words into the equivalent of what they are in that country? And then how far do you go and how far is that diverting from the original text? For example, crisps is what we would say in the UK, I was about to say what we say in English, but it's all in English, but in the US it is potato chips. Are you changing that? Do you change that? Do you change like pavement or to sidewalk? Do you change jam to jelly? Because at that point you're starting to change the words. And how far do you go? Like, how many words do you change before it stops being the original text that it was written to be by the author? And how far are you going to shift the book for its audience? And so I have looked into a couple of examples where this has been done and it's been talked about. It's been quite hard to find information on this, but Harry Potter being the obvious one, this has had stylistic changes made to the text. There is a whole website which I can link, which details every single change that has been made in the Harry Potter text for the US market. So whether that is philosopher to sorcerer to other ones within the text where they changed things. So I mean, I've just clicked on to the first book, page 17. The UK edition says, "I'll be taking Sirius's bike back," and the US is supposedly, "I best get this bike away." I'll have the website linked where it has all of the different changes that were made to the Harry Potter books, all of them listed. Supposedly there's quite a few, alongside, so these are actually changings of the sentences alongside the changes to things like sweater to jumper, or I don't even know which word, like all of those other ones that I've already noticed. So how far away is the US Harry Potter books from the UK one if they are already changing words like jam to jelly, and they are changing some of the stylistic choices within the books? They're changing some of the way it was written. They're changing some of the structure. So how far away is that US version from the UK one? This is also something that I saw happens with Discworld as well, that they change the stylistics of the text and they Americanize it. And so there were some articles saying that some of the puns don't quite work because of how they've changed the words, and so the puns don't always float together. And I'm like, but I haven't read Discworld, but I'm like, if you're reading Discworld, I think you're reading it like it's meant to have the puns in it. Why would the Americans want to remove the puns? In that sense, shouldn't you have kept the text how it was originally written by the UK author? Speaking of Discworld as well, there is a whole forum post about the book Reaper Man and how the US edition is longer because they wanted to stylistically change it so that the word yes appears on a different page, or the way it was formatted was different, so it's got 400 extra words in it. Now I don't know if those words are all together, if it's 400 words, like a whole page of text all together, or if it's sentences that are dispersed throughout the book. Like, I haven't been able to figure out exactly where these extra words have gone, but there's extra words in there that they have forced into the book, which just seems bizarre. Like, it seems bizarre. And then there was like other things about Discworld saying that how they formatted it differently to, I don't know, remove things and stylistic things. It seems bizarre, and I feel as though, like, at what point are you editing away the choices of the author? I mean, I get that books are edited. You'd think they would publish the same book in different countries, that you wouldn't edit it differently. Or if it's already been published in the UK, why would you then go and edit it again to remove the UK flavour of it? So now we're moving on to books that have more than just the stylistic changes to them, books that have more than that, and I've had actively more done to them. So from researching, and it's hard, like unless you actively research to see what books have differences, then, and if you don't, only if you know about them, it seems, does the internet tell you. And it's not something that publishers seem to be saying. They don't seem to be saying, this book is published and it has differences between the UK and the US. You will be getting two different books. I mean, maybe that's going a bit too far, but it doesn't seem as though this is something that's really advertised. Again, a book that I haven't read, but Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell is supposedly quite significantly different between the UK and the US because each publishing team edited it themselves or differently. They received the manuscript, the UK publishing team edited it, then the US team edited it, they edited it differently, and they published separate versions. So the books, although they have the same manuscript as the beginning, they have then been edited and gone different paths. And so you have quite different texts, I believe. Like, this was found out by someone who was using both the physical and the Kindle, and they were trying to find sentences that they've read in the physical version on the Kindle version, and they couldn't find them because they didn't exist. And then they researched and they found that there were many instances where the phrasing did not match up between the two editions. Obviously the story tells the same story, but it uses different words to get there. So, I mean, I don't know which one's better, having not read it. I don't know which one is better edited or is considered the real version of Cloud Atlas. The article does say that this isn't a phenomenon. The article does say that this is not a phenomenon. This is not a phenomenon. Oh my god, what is up with that word? This is not a phenomenon unique to Cloud Atlas, but it doesn't go into too much detail about what other books have had this issue where the publishing teams in the different countries have edited the books completely separately from each other. So I don't know how many other books have this, where they started off as the same manuscript and then they've diverged. It does say the UK version was submitted first and the US some weeks later. I mean, and that must be confusing for an author as well, like having to edit. I don't know, like, how would that even work? It doesn't even make sense. The next one where I've noticed a bigger difference as well is with the Northern Lights and the Golden Compass. And I only looked this up because of checking the name and like checking where that coming from, and thought that if they'd changed the name, then maybe they changed something else. Maybe they did. So then I found out that the Northern Lights, supposedly there aren't that many changes, like it's the same. But the third book in the series, the Amber Spyglass, the US publishing house or market decided to censor some passages from the book. That they completely removed a scene from the book for the US market. I don't know why the scene was removed. I don't know what the scene actually is. I did read the series, but many years ago. I don't know what exactly went on, but it feels very bizarre that they would actively remove a scene. And you'd think if this scene was problematic, then the UK audience would have raised it. They'd have said something. So then does it just fall into censorship that you are, I don't know, if you're completely removing a scene from a book, then I don't know, why are you doing that? And it makes me curious as to what scene it is and like why it would be removed for a certain audience. Again, I will link the articles below with more information on that, because that really, I was like, you've removed a whole scene from a book? Really? And now we get to the book that started it all, the book where I got this idea from, and which prompted my thoughts into how the US and the UK market or publishers actively change books. And that is with Beach Read by Emily Henry. So I read Beach Read last year, and my friend Joanna read it upon my recommendation, and she said that the audiobook was different to the physical book. So I was like, oh, I don't understand, how can that be? And it turns out that one is they have completely different endings. There is a UK ending and a US ending. And I mean, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but the US ending is more, I'd say, cliche, whereas the UK ending is more sweet. It's a romance. I'd say the UK ending is like pretty sweet, and the US ending is a rather cringy cliche. I prefer if you can't tell, I prefer the UK ending. I think the UK ending is perfect for the story. It matches it, whereas the US ending is a bit bizarre for the story. I couldn't find any information else on this. I mean, there's articles on Reddit, but I couldn't find any information from the publisher as to why there are different endings. And a different ending to a story, that's not just changing the words from pavement to sidewalk. That is changing an ending. And part of me is wondering, is it the UK publishers that changed this ending because Emily Henry, I believe, is American? Or was it the US publisher that changed the ending? And which ending was written first? Because I don't know. Which was the ending that Emily Henry submitted when she submitted the book? Oh, and which ending was added? Which ending was the one that was changed? I don't know. It boggles my mind that when this book was published, this wasn't advertised. We knew nothing about it. You only know something about it if you have read, like my friend Joanna did, both versions. It's just bizarre. Very bizarre. Like, I don't understand how we can have different endings for the same book and not be told about it. Like, I get that there are films that have endings, but they're generally pretty well publicised that they are having different endings. Like, I've heard about the different endings for I Am Legend, but I feel as though that's quite a common thing. Like, you know about it. There's lots of articles on it. Like, it's pretty big that I Am Legend has different endings. Whereas I've never really seen or heard of a book that has different endings. I don't know. Have you? Can you give me any more examples of books that have differences between the UK and the US markets? And as like a question to publishers, why do you do this? Like, why do you change these things? And what prompts these changes? Like, I don't work in the publishing industry, so I'm trying to figure out the logic behind making these changes and why you think these changes are what is needed for a book to work for a certain audience. Like, what prompts it? Where does this come from? Why? Why do this? Because are you trying to dumb down? Do you think that as an audience we're not clever enough to consume the books if they're written not in our standardised language? Because so many books that I read here in the UK, especially books that don't have a UK publisher, you just read the American version. Like, I don't mind reading a book and seeing words like mom. Yes, I see it. I always see it when things aren't spelled in the way that I naturally spell them. I will see if colour is spelled without the U. And I'm like, oh. But it doesn't impact my enjoyment of the story if I see that things are not spelled in British English. So why would it be any different for the US market? Like, do they see colour with a U and they're like, just don't understand? I don't think so. That's not going to be the case. And then, I mean, that's a very small change, but like changing it when you get into the vocabulary, when you start changing words, when you start changing the actual words that the author has chosen to be written, like, how far are you going? So why are you doing that? To ones where you have passages completely censored out or endings completely changed, like, what prompts those decisions and what prompts you to publish a different book for a different market? It's a question. Like, I want to understand like where this comes from, because I would want to be reading I guess both versions have to get signed off by the author, but I'd want to be reading the one that the author actively chose. I don't know, like, it just seems bizarre, and it doesn't seem talked about. It seems to be brushed under the carpet because I've never seen anyone talk about it before. I've never seen anyone discuss the differences between books depending on the market that you read them in. How can you review a book if you're not reviewing the same book as someone else? Like, how do we know? I mean, you say that we're all reading the same book, that you have a book and everyone across the world is reading that same book, and we're all going to have different experiences with it. But if we're not reading the same book, then how can we review it with any legitimacy if you don't know if you're reading the version that you should, the version that the author actually wanted to be put out? Yeah, it just got me to thinking, like, if I had read the US ending of Beach Read, I feel like I might have rated it lower than I did, because it doesn't, for me, hearing about that ending now, I don't feel like it connects with the rest of the story. And so I feel as though my perception of that book might be different. And thinking about why they would do these things and why publishing does this, and then no one talks about it. Like, I would have thought that on Goodreads or at the publication of the book, there would be something that says, there are two endings. Here is your alternate ending, or here are the changes that have been made. Does it make me want to read American versions of books for books that are published by American authors and read British versions of books by British authors? Maybe. I think as a whole, if I knew the author was British, I would probably be, I'm going to be buying British versions of books anyway, but maybe that would sway me even more to wanting to read the British version of a book. I would be avoiding the Americanization of it. I don't know. So let me know what your thoughts are on this, and if you knew about any of these, if you have any other books that you know have differences between the US and the UK, whether that's titles, whether that's stylistic changes, whether that's bigger changes like endings. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!